Today we're looking at priming miniatures. We do this so that the paint sticks to the miniatures properly. Now, my preferred brand is Krylon, either white or black, and you want the flat or matte paint, not shiny and gloss. The first thing you want to do is shake the can. You want to mix all that paint really well. Never prime in extreme temperatures. If it's too hot out, too cold, if it's raining, the primer is going to turn out terrible. In order to get a nice even coat, use lots of thin layers of paint. Hold the can about a foot away from the parts. Then, start by spraying while your hand is already in motion, but before you reach the parts. This prevents thick bursts of paint from starting each layer. Move the parts around and be sure to cover everything. Front, side, back. Once it's dried, you can do the top or from underneath. I also do tend to move the paint can a little bit closer to the parts as I'm almost done. Kind of a final finish layer, but you still got to watch it that you don't make it too thick. You'll notice I'm priming outside with plenty of fresh air. You don't want to be inhaling this stuff. If you do it inside, it'll smell. It's bad for you. I'm also priming on top of a box so that the paint doesn't get all over the grass or the concrete or anything else that's underneath. When you're spraying larger objects or more objects, you're going to want to shake the can up a little bit more every now and then. It's really not a priority for these small miniatures, but for larger items, you do want to make sure that the paint hasn't settled in the can. So once the paint's dried, you can tip the miniatures over, you can flip over the other bits that you're painting, and spray the sides that you can't really reach when they're standing up or on the side that you did prime. You really do want to make sure that the paint's dried before you flip them over like this. Otherwise, you'll get these ugly flat spots, and you don't want that. In this second round of priming, it's often for the parts that are harder to reach. What some people will do is they'll actually pick their miniatures up and spray them in the air. That's fine, but put on a pair of gloves. You don't want to get that stuff all over your hands. Before calling it quits, inspect everything. There's nothing that sucks more than getting back inside with your nicely primed miniatures and then seeing gray or silver and realizing that you missed some spots. Now, you don't want to go too heavy because it's better to go with a light dusting of primer and maybe miss a spot here and there than just blasting the miniature with a ton of primer to try and get it into all the little nooks and crannies. So how do you get to those nooks and crannies? I'll put a link in the description, but basically there's paint called gesso, and it comes in black, it comes in white, it even comes in clear, and it's basically just paint on primer. It's great for getting in those nooks and crannies and touching up scratches. What I want to show here is that the distance from the surface makes a big difference. This first one, great. That second one, terrible, way too thick. Now this final one, it's too far away, and you can see how a lot of the cardboard still shows through. Finally, when you're done, tip the paint can upside down, do a quick burst until the paint runs out, and you're done. This just makes sure that there isn't any paint left in the nozzle that could dry out. Now, just a couple final points for discussion. Before you start out, make sure that you clean the mold lines, because there's nothing that ruins a nice paint job than an ugly mold line. The other thing you're going to want to do before you get started is to wash your miniatures in dish soap or hand soap to get rid of all the oil from your hands, which prevents paint from sticking well. In fact, I never prime a model until it's ready to be painted. And once it's being painted, that model is not part of my army. I don't want to get any more oils all over the finish. Thanks for watching. As always, there'll be relevant articles linked in the description. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments.